Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. Before we start, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So can you just type bird on the chat if you can hear me okay, please? Just some basic tech tests. Okay. Yep, everybody can hear me. So now I'm going to ask Louis to say something and let me know if you can hear him okay, please.
Hi everyone, it's great to meet you this evening and thank you for that introduction. Can you all hear me okay?
Let's give it a couple of seconds. Yes, okay, awesome. Cool. So now we can start. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to virtually see everybody again. This is the first webinar of our exam prep series. We will have more webinars coming soon. We actually already have one booked for next Tuesday. So it would be great if you sign up for that as well. I'm going to share the link in a minute. But before we start with the presentation, I just want to do a bit of a housekeeping and let you know some information. So my name is Flavia. If you don't know me yet, I am the chief scientist at Seneca. I've been with Seneca since 2017, since the literal beginning, since there was not even a platform launched yet. And I'm still work here and I love it. It's great. I think most of you will already know Seneca. If you don't know Seneca, just let me know in the comments and I can send you more info. But the idea of this is that we always provide free CPD for teachers. So we have all the courses for students, all the materials, everything. But we also like to keep teachers engaged. So we have done lots of CPDs, online courses, and presentations like that, webinars and conferences virtually, because we started them during the pandemic. And then they just went so well that we decided to keep them even now. So thank you so much for being here. And today we're going to talk about exam preparation and evidence-informed techniques. So things that you can apply with your students to help them prepare for their GCSEs, A-levels, or any other exams that they are going to take. How is today going to work? I'm going to finish this introduction, then I'm going to let Louis give his presentation. He's going to be talking for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So please write as many questions as you can think of in the chat. We love questions. It just makes everything much more fun. So any questions that you think, just type them. You won't be able to ask them during the presentation, but I will ask them. I will read them aloud after the presentation. So you will have your answer. So make sure that you type all your questions in the chat, as many questions as you can think of. Also, if you have any thoughts or any comments or even any resources that you want to share with everybody else, feel free to. Obviously, be respectful and kind, but you can share resources and you can share ideas and you can share comments as well as questions in the chat. Okay. So yeah, after the presentation, after the Q&A, I will do a presentation myself because Seneca has just launched a brand new feature that is honestly awesome. It's one of the best ones so far, which is an exam question feature. So you will have AI marked exam questions for your students and for you as well. And actually, Louis helped to write some of them. He wrote some of them. So he can talk a little bit more about that during his presentation. But that's also why I invited him, because he has been involved in this process, and I know that he's very good at that. So I will talk to you more about the exam questions that we have on Seneca after his presentation. Is everything okay so far? Everything clear? So just a few more things before we start. We have a hashtag. So if you are on Twitter, please also share your thoughts on Twitter so that more people can see this presentation and can interact with us. So we have a hashtag that is Seneca CPD. It's there on the screen. And we have our own profile there, which is Seneca Learn. So if you can use the hashtag and tag us, then we will retweet your post and then we just get a conversation going even outside of this presentation right now. Second thing is that this will be recorded, so you can come back to this anytime that you want in the future, and you can share this with your colleagues that couldn't be here live. But YouTube is a big place. There are a million videos, so make sure that you like the video, not because I want to be an influencer or anything, but because if you like the video, it gets saved to your YouTube account, so you can find it later. So like the video so you don't lose this URL. You will receive more information afterwards via email, so a few links and more resources, and even a copy of the slides as well. All right, so very last thing now, I'm just gonna share the link for our Tuesday webinar. And if you could take 30 seconds and sign up for that webinar, that would be great. So we have at least 4 webinars in this series, in this exam prep series, each time with a different speaker, all of them equally amazing. So please sign up. Even if you cannot make it live on Tuesday, make sure you sign up so you get the link to watch the recording afterwards. All right, so I think we are good to go. Let's just wait 20 more seconds for people to sign up and for people to ask questions if you have anything that's not clear. And then I'll let Louis start his presentation. Most important thing is to use the chat to ask questions. Sign up to the webinar. Use hashtag SenecaCPD on Twitter. All right, I think we can start now. So thank you so much for being here, Louis, for accepting this invitation. I've seen your presentation, it's great. I'm sure people will take a lot from it.
Thank you, Flavia, for that lovely introduction. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all virtually this evening. Today's presentation, I'm going to be talking about strategies for preparing your students for the upcoming examinations, whether that be in January or in the summer. So over the years, obviously, we haven't had exams, and naturally, there's going to be a degree of anxiety about sitting them this summer. Obviously, this summer we had exams, but there's still a bit of a hangover from the COVID era that we've just lived through. So it's really important, it's imperative that we prepare our students for exams as well as we can. And that involves using a number of strategies in order to do that. And I've come up with 4 that I found effective in my own teaching practice. So I'll talk a bit about those during the course of this presentation. Now, just before I do that, I'll just give you a bit of information about who I am and what I studied at university, just to give you a bit of context. So many years ago, it feels like a lifetime ago now, studied for a degree and a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Nottingham. And then I went on after my doctorate to pursue a postgraduate diploma in secondary education with qualified teacher status. And I was awarded that from the University of Birmingham. And that's I took a particular interest during my time at Birmingham in assessment, formative assessment, and how it can be deployed as an effective tool for enhancing student performance. Over the last 7 or 8 years, I've taught in 2 state secondary schools, both rated outstanding, and I now work in further education, delivering A-level chemistry, access to higher education, and BTEC applied science with forensics. We follow the forensics and analytical pathway, and in that course, we have exams as well as coursework. In terms of my experience as an examiner, seeing the other side of it, I've worked for various exam boards as both a GCSE and A-level chemistry examiner for a number of years now. I'm also an external examiner for the foundation year of a bioveterinary medicine course at the Nottingham University. And recently I've been working with Seneca to create novel exam questions that focus on organic chemistry. So trying to create questions which challenge and inspire students to carry on with their chemistry studies. So so it's been quite a busy few years. I feel sometimes I can see the wrinkles on my face, which is evidence of a lot's been going on, but I've enjoyed every moment of it. So just to give you a breakdown of what we're going to be talking about for the next few minutes. So I've come up with 4 strategies I've tried to use and implement as effectively as possible during my teaching practice. One of the strategies is where students are and become examiners, so role reversal, and they quite enjoy that, and I'll talk a bit about that in a moment. A second strategy is one that you use already anyway in your classroom practice, I'm sure, but it's about how we can effectively use exam questions as impactful assessment for learning tools, because sometimes they can be used as a bit of a blunt tool and they're not always used effectively to engender pupil progress. Third strategy I'll talk about is how to target specific topics and skills. And then the last strategy is going to be focusing on QLA, question level analysis. So looking at students' performance in exams and looking at their questions in detail, question by question, how they done, to give you that granular detail to see how can I help my students improve. So the first strategy. So what I like to do is to empower my students in class. I like them to become the examiner, to almost take the fear out of exams, to remove the anxiety. Exams become a bogeyman and people become scared of them. But what I want students to see is actually, if you unpick how your exam papers are marked and you understand how they are marked, that will in turn enhance your performance. So what I've got here is just a diagram which explains the way I plan this particular activity into my lessons. So I'll just go through how I do this. So when students learn content, rather than giving them an exam question to answer, I give them examples of other pupils' responses. So they get to become the examiner. And I do this as a dedicated lesson, so they understand how to mark exam questions, so that when they come to mark their own questions, they're more well versed and more well nuanced in how to mark their own responses. Okay, so I try to make sure this is embedded into my scheme of work, and it's something that can't be rushed. Okay, but if it's done well, it does have long-lasting rewards. You do reap the efforts of what you do reap the rewards of what you've done with them, because they can then mark their own work, and ultimately that reduces the burden of marking on yourself. So I always explain to students why we are doing this. I provide them with the rationale, why are we doing this? We're doing this so you can see the standard that's expected of you, and you can see how other students have performed and what mistakes they've made, so they can see what to do and what not to do. Once I've done this, I give students a question. I model how to mark a question. So I say, right, here's a question. I'll show you how to mark it. I'll show you how to apply a mark scheme. And I'll show you how to allocate marks and what you're allowed to give marks for, and what you're allowed to say in your exam script and what you're not allowed to say, what words and terminology you need to use. And we also, around that, in that discussion, discuss the knowledge and skills needed to answer the question as well, obviously. So we discussed the question, we model the knowledge and skills needed to answer the question. I then model to them how to mark an answer to this question, and then I give them one to do themselves. And once we've done that, we then discuss it as a group, and they hopefully get some sort of insight into how to apply a mark scheme, so that when they come to mark their own work, they're number one, applying it effectively, but they're also cognizant of the standards required to successfully answer a question. And they also see examples of candidates who have not answered it successfully as well, and why. So just to give you a screen grab of some of the sample work I've done. So this is courtesy of a TES author. I downloaded this from somewhere, and this is an activity they use. I always use I use my own activities, but I sometimes use other people's activities and repurpose them. And what I've done here is I've taken a BTEC question. I've got a BTEC class this year, and they've got an exam coming up in January, and the exams are somewhat scary to them. So I took this question. I said, look, here's a question about the lungs. Okay, I know not everyone on the chat might be a scientist. Excuse me, losing my voice. It's been a long day, 6 hours of teaching. So I give them a question, and I say, right, I model the knowledge they need to answer the question. I say, right, here we now have 4 student responses. I will mark one with the mark schemes. I'll show you how to apply the mark scheme effectively. And once we've done that, I then show them the marks that the student got in the one I modeled, and give them the rationale for why they got those marks. Then they try the other responses themselves. Okay, so these are 4 sample responses. I marked response A the other day with them, and then I showed them why they got X number of marks out of X number of marks. And then I gave them the other 3, and most of them actually managed to apply the mark scheme effectively first time round. and they could say why they could understand why marks are awarded in a particular place. So that's one example I've used from Pearson, or there are more. Obviously, there's more than one exam board that we can use. I'm not plugging any one particular exam board. When I taught OCR A-level chemistry, I used to do something similar. So if you go on any exam board website, you can find candidates' responses in most cases. I mean, if you're having trouble finding them, they should be people to contact who can provide you with them. But OCR definitely have them, and so do Pearson. It's just a matter of finding them. I've just seen a question which I'll answer later about do you find some don't take it seriously? The question, I will answer that now actually. In my experience, most do, because they actually quite enjoy being an examiner. I suppose it's about the way it's pitched to them, and saying, look, this can have a real impact on your performance, and it's important to take this experience seriously if you're serious about getting the mark you need to go onto your college course or your university course. Obviously, they then see the benefit of it. So it's selling it the right way. It's been pitching it to your audience in a way which they see the value of it. Is my response to that. Hopefully that sort of answers your question. If not, I can talk to you about it a bit later in a bit more detail. Anyway, sorry. So this is just the OCR website. You can find candidate exemplars with questions and mark schemes. And again, they provide a candidate response. They also give a commentary. They also give a commentary of why those marks are awarded. And I integrate, I show them that as well. So I mark one, I show them how I've allocated the marks, and I show them the commentary so they can see the breakdown. Do you give a simplified version of the mark scheme? Just in the question. Sometimes yes. Sometimes I break it down first, because some of the mark schemes can be pretty horrendous.
Let me you don't have to answer them as you go if you don't want to. I'm just posting them so that to generate engagement so people can see the questions.
No, that's fine. I was just thinking,
if you want to, that's fine, but you don't have to. So.
That's fine. I was just thinking in the moment while it's there, fresh in my mind. So sometimes I do give a simplified mark scheme. Some mark schemes are pretty hard to navigate, even as a teacher and even as an examiner. Sometimes they're quite awkward to navigate. So sometimes, you have to differentiate the mark scheme as well. Eventually, they become better at it. Okay, so hopefully we found that quite a useful insight into one strategy. A second strategy I use is once I've trained them on how to use the mark scheme and how to apply it effectively, it makes my life easier when I plan my lessons, when I give them exam questions to practice. Now, my one thing I would say is using exam questions, don't overdo it. Do it little and often, like one a lesson or one every 2 lessons. Otherwise, they just become exam fatigued. But one effect it does have of them seeing it little and often is it does become they do become desensitized to the anxiety and stress of exams. I find they do find it easier to cope with a question when they're confronted with it. So when I give an exam question in a lesson, I always make sure I explicitly relate it to the specifications. Specifications have changed considerably over the last 10 years. So always make sure that you know your spec inside out, every part of it, every nuance of it. And what I do is I show them a screenshot of the spec and the corresponding exam question, which examines that part of the spec. I have that on my slide. And it gives, therefore, a clear justification of why we're using this exam question in lessons. Okay, and it also makes clear the exam board's expectations of what students need to do. So if we just move around to part 2 on the diagram, model how to answer questions. So I always model how to answer the question. I show what a good one looks like, what we used to call a waggle years ago. So I always apply that principle of showing them what a good one looks like. And then once I've done that, so I just need to move that. I can't read something I wanted to write there. So there's something covering the text slightly. So once I've shown them what a good answer looks like, I then give them a similar question and ask them to tackle it. And I either, if appropriate, I scaffold a response. So if you're a science teacher, you'll notice 6 markers are becoming quite common, and they assess practical work. So sometimes if it's a 6-mark question we're practicing, I take the mark scheme myself and I break it down into a series of smaller 6 questions to help scaffold their response. If it's a particularly high ability group, sometimes I have to differentiate a little further for the more able students when they do an exam question. Some of them might be a little easier. So I try to find ones which challenge and enable them to apply their knowledge a little more. And once I've done all those things, got those all in those ingredients embedded into my practice, I make sure that exam questions are embedded into my scheme of work. They're interspersed at regular intervals, but not too regular. It's getting the right balance between giving them enough exam questions to practice and not killing them with exam questions. And I find that that little and often exposure to exam questions, it really does improve the long-term retention of knowledge, because ultimately, you know, that little and often exposure, we need that long-term memory to be, we need to have the AFL to be impactful, and therefore engender long-term memory, engender a love for learning, but also that long-term memory, because they sit exams at the end of 2 years now, and they need to be able to recall instantly the part of a cell or the name of a particular particle, etc. Sorry, I'm using scientific examples. It's the ones I naturally default to. So they need to make sure they've got that baseline knowledge of retention of knowledge. My third strategy is I try to make sure that when I give them exam questions, I target specific areas. So with my A-level chemists, I identify specific areas of the spec that they're finding difficult, or that they find easy and they might need more challenge on. They might need to be challenged and stretched and challenged a little further. And I do that by implementing my previous strategy 2. So strategy 2 is where I use the exam questions as AFL to inform my homework, my practice, my teaching. So I list topics that I know they're either finding difficult or they're finding easy, and based on that, I direct them to a primer, I call it, an area where they need to develop or improve or challenge themselves on. And that could be a YouTube web link or a ebook or some online resource. Once they've read that and I make sure they've done that, I say it's compulsory that you have to do that. I then design a booklet, and I used to use ExamPro to design a booklet which would focus on a particular skill. So I issue that themed booklet that plugs the gap or develops their knowledge or challenges them further. Then I issue a deadline, and I ask them to mark their responses using the skills they've learned that I've upskilled them on self-marking using mark schemes. Sometimes I even attach an examiner's report so they can read of the common pitfalls. So lastly, this was one that QLA is something which used to be a bit of a Marmite thing in my experience. People either loved it or they hated it. I find it an effective tool. It is a pain to do because it's quite time consuming. But I do find that once they've done all the practice and the lessons on how to tackle exam questions, once they've actually sat a end of topic test or a mock exam, I find the use of QLA effective. So QLA, or question level analysis, I'm not sure if people do this in their schools or institutions, but in my experience, the schools I've worked at, we've taken every single question from an exam paper and we've put it in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Doc. We've typed in the mark they've got for every single question, and that produces a feedback sheet which RAG rates, red, amber, green rates their performance in that particular area of the exam. And I try to make that really useful and impactful because I've spent all that time putting the data in. I want to make sure that I get the most out of it and benefit my pupils. So students who are all getting green, they're easy to triage. They need something to challenge them further. So you can easily direct them to self-led study or a reflective task or a challenge task of some description. Those students who are performing not so well and are becoming up amber and red in a number of topics, I triage them and do a one-to-one with them or a small group tutorial in a dedicated lesson. But ultimately, I redirect them then once they've had that session with me, or that self-reflection session, or that YouTube session where they've challenged themselves further. I then redirect them to exam questions again, so they can then practice them and see where they've gone wrong before. And essentially that's my 4 strategies. Those are the things I've just picked up over the years of teaching. In addition to using ExamPro, OCR, and Pearson, Seneca has a platform which allows students to do questions which also self-mark, which also again cuts down on your workload. As educators, we're all extremely busy. There's never enough time in education. I always find I've got loads of things to do and just about enough time to get some things due. So I in addition to using your traditional paper-based practice exam questions, Seneca really does help provide a means of cutting down your workload. And I think someone's mentioned that in the chat. Using insights, you can reduce the workload of correct QLA. Yeah, it is something that I'm really keen on doing, using data to drive performance in a way which doesn't take us too much time, but also is effective as well as a tool to promote good pupil outcomes. So hopefully that's provided some insight into the way I try and think about things. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to look through some of the questions as well. That I'm just looking in the chat now. Sorry, I've got distracted by looking at the chat. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I need a drink now, if that's okay.
Thank you. That was really great. Yeah, I think all the strategies were really, really well thought of and very well explained. And we do have some questions. So some of them you already answered during the presentation, so I'm not going to repeat them. But there are a couple more here. So Deepti was asking, how can we encourage students with low self-esteem? I guess that was the first strategy, maybe.
Yeah, so
to mark themselves.
To mark themselves, yeah. So I think it's showing them some success. So showing them that actually they can do it. So give them something. It suits us suffering from low self-esteem or struggling with the course or finding the content hard. I think giving them an easy win to start with is where I always go. You try and start simple and build upwards, because if they are suffering from low self-esteem, chances are they're finding the course heavy, the content hard. So giving them an easy win to start with is one method I've used, and really using positive praise, not in a way which is too saccharine, patronizing, but a way we're saying, well done. That's a really good answer you've given there, and you've managed to recall that information good. So now you've done that, I'm sure you'd be good at doing the next question. Why not have a go at this? And just sitting with them and giving them a little bit of a prompt, scaffolding them a bit, differentiating with them verbally. People think differentiation has to be paper-based resources. It doesn't. I was always told, or my mentor said, differentiation is also when you're verbally supporting the student as well. Is that
Yeah, I think so. I think that does answer the question, but Deep, to let us know if you want to continue. So Connor was asking how much students need to know and understand the content in order to use the mark scheme correctly, or if getting the mark scheme wrongly is also part of the learning process.
I think you could use it. I mean, there's a number of ways you could do it. I mean, sometimes you judge it in situ and you respond how they've dealt with the information. I think obviously teaching a good chunk of content first is imperative. Obviously, you can't really apply a mark scheme if you've taught 2 lessons worth of content. So I think, making sure you teach a decent amount of content, giving them a task like a quiz, a Kahoot, something quick to gauge whether they've actually got it first in the first place. Some easy summative assessment just to make sure they've got it before moving on to giving them a mark scheme and trying the exam question. I think that's important. Obviously, you could take it the other way. You could say, actually, then misapplying the mark scheme or misunderstanding actually is a valuable learning experience. I always say to students, they will say, oh, I don't want to get it wrong. And I say, no. It's fine. The biggest things I've got wrong in life when I've been learning as an academic or as a student, getting them wrong, I've sometimes learned more from getting it wrong than actually getting it right. In fact, some of the times I've got things right the first time round, I thought I've understood it. Actually, I didn't. Yeah, so it's about being a reflective learner in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a whole process, right? And that's also why when we started with Seneca, we made it into a formative assessment or assessment for learning tool. So when students get something wrong, they don't get punished for that. That's just used as a learning step to get into the full learning of the content.
And there's no right or wrong. The situation's fluid. It depends on the cohort, the class. I mean, I've done something with 1 year and tried it with the next year, and I think, they're a similar profile, academic profile, and it just blows up in my face and it doesn't work. even 7 years on, that still happens, and you just have to judge it and go, right, I need to recalibrate my mindset and think about what else I could do, or mold or modulate the strategy I've used, because all these strategies are just broad brush. They have to be modulated, refined to make them work for your group.
Yeah. So we have another question here from Millie. Is there such a thing as too early to start students on exam practice?
It's a good question. Again, I think you have to judge it, based on the cohort you have in front of you. I mean, if you had a low ability group, I think it's something you want to slowly gravitate towards. You judge it based on the context of your class. I've taught groups which have been highly able, middle ability, and low ability. I think that sometimes my own personal experience, exam questions too early can be a little discouraging. I would agree. However, if you do give them an easy question to start with and they get it right, that can build their confidence, because sometimes those low ability groups go, I can't do it, I'm in a bottom set, it's difficult. But giving them an exam question to do and them getting it right can actually have a really positive impact. It can really change the mindset of the group. And in some ways, I've given them an exam question and not told them it's an exam question. And then afterwards I've said, well, that task you've just done there, that was an exam question and you all got it right. And they go, my goodness, really? I can do it. I can do science. I can do this. But yeah, let's capitalize upon that positivity. So it depends. You've got to judge it. It depends on your group, I'd say. But I've done it both ways. I've done it where I think, no, they're not ready yet. And in some ways I've gone, actually, let's just sneak a question in early doors. And they've done well in it. And actually it's created a really positive climate for learning.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. More questions. So Connor, now I think it's about science, but I guess that reflects on every subject.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the content is huge. I agree. The amount of material you have to get done in a very small amount of time is quite something. So I try to do it, I would say perhaps every 4 lessons. Sometimes it depends on how quick I'm going. Again, it depends on the situation you're at the time. If the group works quickly, if they work slowly, what the attendance is like in the group. You have to judge it based on the group you've got at the time. I mean, if you're up against it and you've got content to deliver, it might be something you could focus on towards the end once you've delivered everything, you've nailed all the content. But yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, and that there is so much to cover. And if you're working at a good pace, you can do it on a regular basis. If there's, for various reasons, the group's getting behind, then it's something you have to think, well, actually, at the moment, it's not my priority at the moment. My priority is to deliver the content first, check they've understood it in a simplistic way, and then the students and examiner activity we could do perhaps at the end of a given topic. Hopefully that is clear and I've answered that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to pitch in Seneca a little bit more, but there you can pre-program your exam questions for students. So if you already know when you will be, if you want to use it every 4 lessons, for example, you can already pre-program them. So you don't even have to do that every time that you want to set a new exam question. You just leave them there and say, show up on that day.
Yeah.
So
I bet it is a routine.
Yes, precisely. I think, Kirsty, if you could just give more details about your question level analysis.
So the question level analysis, it's always been done by people who are much better at IT than me. So I've always been privileged to be given the sheet. However, I have spoken to some colleagues today, actually. I said, I wanted to learn how to do this last year, but we, with the hangover of COVID, we literally just ran out of time and we didn't have the scope to do it. So I'm told it's not that hard, but that might be someone who is particularly well versed in using Excel or Google Docs. So my honest answer to that one is I'm not sure. I've been told it's easy, but that may just because someone's good at using Excel and Google Docs. It's something I would really like to sit down and do. I've always used it. Yeah, so I can see someone's responded there. Done it on spreadsheets, Google Sheets, quite easy to do. So yeah, it's something that I've always been lucky someone's done it for me. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I've only been the user, but used it effectively.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we share, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah.
Somebody has made something good. No reason why we won't use it. There is one other question from Deep T that I'm just gonna, before you answer, I'm just gonna say, and somebody has said that already, it's retrieval practice. It's like practicing, practicing, practicing until the knowledge gets consolidated for the
Yeah.
student's brain. We have had talks about that before. So if you go on our YouTube channel, you will see some presentations about specifically the only retrieval practice, how to get students to remember things. And that is the main methodology that we use on Seneca as well, especially on the free courses, which is like just practice, answer questions. And every time that you answer a question, you create a new connection between different pieces of information. So that helps your students remember that information later on. But go on, Louis, if you want to say anything else about that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's that repeated exposure. That if it's a group where it's about getting the key facts remembered, yeah, it's that repetition. Keep revisiting every opportunity. I do it when I'm talking about something else that links to the topic. So I'll say, by the way, remind me, what's the proper name for a red blood cell? What do we actually call a red blood cell? What's its name? And I've told them it perhaps half an hour before, perhaps 2 weeks before, but I keep coming back to reinforce that basic level of knowledge. And when they get it right, again, it builds confidence, and you build and capitalize upon that.
Yeah. And we have a whole free CPD course on Seneca about retrieval practice that was written by Kate Jones, who's written many books about that. So you can go there on Seneca and then do the whole course for yourself and learn even more about that. We're running out of time, but there are a few more questions. So I'm just going to keep answering them if you don't have to go. If you're good. So some questions cover several topics. Do you split these questions?
Sometimes not. Sometimes I link them together. It depends on the ability of the group. If it's a middle to low ability group, I'll probably split them into two distinct questions. But if they're higher ability and they can link ideas together, I'd keep them as one. It's all about context. It depends on what suits the group at the time and what stage they're at.
Yeah. Now maybe a bit.
I've just commented to you. Yeah. So I'm just reading some of the comments.
Yeah. This may be a harder question now. Has there been confirmation of how effective different practices have been? How are you measuring if they're working or not working?
Yeah, so the confirmation for me was the results this summer. A number of my students performed in excess of what we predicted or on target, and it was really heartening to see this summer all the work we've done to go towards exam performance paid off. A number of my A-level chemists were awarded A's and A stars and got places at Oxford and Cambridge, or the other university to study their course of choice. So yeah, that for me, that was the confirmation. It's a hard thing to, I suppose, how do you quantify it? How do you know it's making an impact? I think the results it has in the exams in the summer shows the effect it has and the impact it's having, but also how they perform in end of topic tests or how they improve over time. Sorry, there's an alarm going off outside. I'm just wondering what it is.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We're good. We can hear you okay.
So hopefully that answers the question. It's the results that you see at the end for me, and also the results you see in between, building up to the end of year exams as well.
Yeah. I think that's it in terms of questions. So somebody's been now Googling the proper name of our red blood. So, do you want to tell us what it is?
I think someone's already put it in the chat. Actually, someone's already mentioned it, which is great. I'd just like to say thank you for this is my first seminar, so thank you for making me feel so welcome. I was got a little bit of a fluttering of the heart before I started. It's always but you've made me feel very welcome, and I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you.
No, it was excellent. It was really, really great. You should do more webinars because this was great. So everybody, thank you so much. Please go on Twitter, share your thoughts. You're not on Twitter, are you, yet?
Me on Twitter? No, I'm not. I'm not. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I've seen a comment there. Thank you. Thank you. I've got Mrs. G33K. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not on Twitter yet. I've not signed myself up. I came off Twitter a long time ago. I should sign up. I never really used it properly. Like I just had it, but someone had to teach me how to hashtag. I'm not that. I know how to do. I know I can do IT, but I thought I was tagging someone and I wasn't. So I've become old before my time.
Yeah. Well, if you want to use a hashtag, just go for hashtag Seneca CPG because that's our hashtag.
Yeah, I know how to do it now. So
cool. Thank you so much, everybody. But don't go away yet because I'm going to show you how you can use all of their, well, some of their own Seneca. I'm going to show you how the exam questions work. And I'm going to tell you what you can get from attending this webinar. So you get a prize in the end. So don't go away just yet. But let's thank Louis again. Thank you so much. That was really, really great. You can see from the comments here that people really appreciated it and learned something useful from here.
Yeah, brilliant. Am I? Do I log off now just so I
can remove you and then you can log off if you want, or you can stay if you want to as well.
I'll stay for a bit. Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just get a drink for a second if that's all right. Okay. I'll just mute myself and stop my cam. So
cool. Okay, everybody. So now, thank you so much. Thank you for your questions. They were really great. We had lots of engagement in this talk. That was really nice. So now let me just show you a little bit about Seneca exam questions because these are brand new. We just launched them. Actually, officially, we launched them this week. That's why we're doing this series of webinars. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a little bit about what we have. So I'll make it a bit bigger. So I'm going to consider that most of you already know Seneca. Again, if you don't know, you can get in touch with me. My email is flavia@seneca.io. So just respond to any of the emails that you got from us about this webinar, and I'll make sure to help you. But I'm just going to consider that you know the basics of Seneca. So Seneca has always been very focused on retrieval practice, which is what we were talking about in terms of helping students remember and consolidate information. We've always used active methodology, retrieval practice, spacing, interleaving, dual coding, all of that. But it was all about knowledge, static knowledge, let's call it that way. There wasn't a way for students to apply that knowledge. So now there is. We've created this really, really cool system for AI marked exam questions. So not only students get to practice there, but you get to see everything that they are doing without any extra marking, without any extra workload from your side. So just going to show you how it works. So this is the normal Seneca teacher page. If you haven't been there in a while, you notice that the colors are a bit different because we've been looking to how to make them more accessible for people with color blindness or dyslexia. That's why we've changed the color scheme, trying to be more inclusive. So this is the normal one. And you're going to set an assignment just like you normally do. So you're going to go on add an assignment. And I'm just going to go for a course that I know for a fact has some of those. Same thing again, you click on the assignment and then you select wasn't this one. You select you select the questions that you want to do. I have too many, so I picked them over here. Yeah. So you select some questions. Which I think is the other one. Sorry, I'm just went to the wrong course. But this is the same thing. So you go, you select some questions, and then you go on assign. But then you have this extra step here. That's the new thing. So you get to see exam questions. So they are based on the actual exam, and we have them specifically for AQA and Excel, etc. And some of them, or all of them, were written by experts like Louis himself and other people. So we have different people writing for geography, DT, sciences, MFL, all the subjects. And you get to swap and pick the ones that you want. So for this particular topic here of photosynthesis, we have 15 available exam questions. And if you don't want to use those, you can swap and see all the options. And you can swap and see all the options. And we have 1, 2, and 3 mark questions. So you just choose the ones that you want to set to your students. Click next. And then the rest is the same. So you give it a name, you set it to your classes, and you share them. So that's the same thing. You just have to add the exam questions that you want. So let me show you now what students see. So yeah, less marking, which is really good. So when students go on their assignments, they will see that you have the normal content here for them to do, and they have exam questions. So every time that a teacher sets them exam questions, they will see that they have been set exam questions. So if you want to answer those, you're just going to click here, and it will show you. So you notice that this is a bit different from what we currently have on Seneca, because it's not multiple choice, it's not word fill, it's just a blank paragraph. So they have to type the answers. Okay, so in this case, I have to name 3 molecules. I'm just going to type anything just so you know what it works like. You will submit, and it will mark automatically. How is this marking done? That's the coolest part. It is done with AI or machine learning. So what we did was to collect lots of the perfect answers for that, and then we are training our system on how to mark those automatically. It's very fancy. It's very cool. It's very like progressive. Very few other tools have them. And then, so everything, and every time their student answers a question, that gets fed back into our system, and then it keeps learning on how to mark even better. So not only students are learning, but our system is learning, and then more students will learn because our answers will be even better. So here I've been marked. I got 0 marks. Fine. I took 27 seconds, and it shows me what the mark scheme was. So this is a 1 mark question. It's a very simple one, so it's just 1 answer, but we do have 2 and 3 mark questions as well. Students can feedback if they don't agree with something. So we use that information as well. So if we see that a question is being flagged, we can go and fix it or improve it. So it's a work in progress. It's a community of learning and teaching, and everybody wins in the end. Okay, so I answer this, and then I go next, and I'll see my next question, and then I go next, and I go next. And here comes another really, really good thing, which is what you see as a teacher after the student has answered those questions. So if I go here on my, and that's normal again, if you want to see the results of an assignment, you just click on assignment, and then you're going to see. So you have the topics, which are the normal content that you set, and then you can also see the exam questions. And here I can see there's no privacy breach here. These are all my colleagues from Seneca, so no real student here. But I can see which of them has answered which questions, and how many marks they got for each question, and also in total, and how long it took them, if they did it or if they didn't do it. And I can go and I see, oh, so this person here, she got 1 out of 3 marks. What did she say? And I actually get to see what she wrote, and I get to see what the mark scheme was, right? So, like I said, it saves you a lot of time. You don't have to mark those because it's just being marked for you, and you get to see. You have to see everything that every child writes, every student writes on those questions, and you get to see the marks. And if you don't agree with the mark, that's okay as well. This one I have already changed. But if you don't agree with the mark scheme, you can say, actually, I think this is right. So I would actually give them a 2 mark here instead of just 1. You can change that because you're still the teacher. So we're helping students, we're helping teachers, but you are still the teacher, obviously. So if you don't agree, you can change that. And every feedback that we get is used to improve the system even more. I realize I talked a lot, so I'll give a few seconds if you have any questions about this feature. But I will let you know that this is free for 3 questions live. So if I set 3 questions today, I can only set another question to that class once one of them has expired. So if I set a question that students have to complete until the 30th of September, I can only set my 4th question on the 1st of October. That's with the free package, but if you get the premium package, you get access to every single question. You can set all of them, thousands of them on the same day if you want to. And yeah, everybody who signs up to those webinars that we are doing about exam questions have a 10% off on premium. So I'm going to share the link that you will have to use. It's this one, to request a quote for your school, knowing that if you attend the webinar, which you are doing, you also get a 10% off on premium. And this is just one part of premium. You have other things that you get from premium that I'm not going to cover here right now. But if you fill this out, my colleague Olivia, not Olivia in this case, it will be Amelia, she will answer you and give you a quote and give you the discount. And yeah. Great. So make sure that you fill out. You don't have to buy it just because you fill out the form, but I do recommend that you do it just so you have more information about it. Another thing that you get from attending this webinar is the free MIS sync. So if you use Seneca, you know that it can be a bit time consuming to set up all your classes, get students to sign up, share the link with them. You don't have to do any of that anymore because it's all done via the system. We connect and we sync our system with your school system. So every child, every student, every teacher, everybody gets their account connected, gets allocated to the correct classes. If they change classes, it changes on Seneca as well. Like you basically have no admin anymore. You can straight on use Seneca with your students, and it's really good and it's free. So again, make sure you type in, get in touch with us, and I'll put you on the flow so you get the free MIS syncing, but get the premium as well. Okay, so I'm just going to answer a few questions while you are filling out the form to get the quote. And don't forget to sign up for our upcoming webinar as well on Tuesday. And don't forget to like this video so you can come back to this later on and watch it again and share with your colleagues. Right, so Annika asked if we cover religious studies, AQA. Yes, we do. Wilfred asked, do you think exam questions will mature to the point where schools can do whole test papers? Yes, but not right now. Honestly, I don't know when the computer will be ready to mark a whole essay without any human input. Maybe in the future, but not right now. So right now we can go up to 3 mark questions, and that's already a massive help. I'm sure you will agree with that. But who knows, maybe in the future. But I'm not really worried about that because I think that what happens here is that you have your 1 to 3 mark questions covered with Seneca, which means that you have a lot more free time and energy and honestly mental health because teachers are really busy and there's a big issue. You have all of that free to then work with your students with the higher level questions. So you go for the foreign essays. So having 1 to 3 mark questions done with Seneca actually helps you to help your students with the more complex questions as well. So we're definitely on the right way. Maybe in a few years we'll have a whole essay as well. Also thinking that he wish he had that on his GCSEs. Thank you. Anna's asking if we have IB. We have some IB. We don't have everything. It's not as comprehensive as it is for A-levels and GCSE, but we do have some. So if you go on Seneca, you'll be able to see what kind of things we have for IB available. Connor is asking how big is your question bank and if they're all previous past papers or new. They are new because they are being written by people like Louis and other several different teachers and authors. So they are all new questions that follow what is expected in a paper. So these people who are writing questions, they are teachers, they are educators, but they are also examiners. So they know what to do. They know what to ask. So the questions are new. We also have predicted papers, but we already had that before. But now we have new questions that are being written for this feature specifically. Margaret said that's excellent. Thank you, Margaret. Anthony already has the MIS and it's excellent. Thank you. David is asking, can you reuse an assignment for other classes? Yes, you can actually set the same assignment. Let me just remove this comment. You can set the same assignment to multiple classes at the same time. So when you go on your over, view page again, and you set an assignment. It's gonna choose one random one here. You can assign them to more than one. I only have one class in this case, but you can choose all of your classes here. It's no problem at all. So you can do that very easily. You don't have to set one assignment per class if they're all the same. Amy is asking if it is accessible to young people that are home educated. Can the parents use it as teacher? Yes, we do have a whole parent platform. That wasn't the topic today, but since you asked, we do have a whole parent platform, so I can change that. Let me just change that. Teacher, parent. So on the parent platform, you can connect to your own child, and then you can follow their progress on Seneca. So you can set them assignments if you use the teacher platform, but as a parent, you can track everything that's being done by your child here. And the parent platform is free. So yes, you can use that as a parent. To use the exam, students can access the exam questions even without a teacher, so it's fine if they're home educated. If you're a parent, you can also access those via the student platform. Harriet asking this for all subjects. We have them for many. So we have Seneca for almost all subjects. The exam style questions are not for all yet, but they will be soon. It's just something, like I said, super, super new. We just launched them this week. So we're getting there, but we definitely have it for more and more subjects. Charis asking how do we get the Sims link up. So the Sims link up is the MIS sync, which I said before. So it can work with Sims, it works with Arbor or any of those other providers. So you just have to get in touch with me. I'm gonna put my name here. There is a link, but I won't be able to find it right now. So I'm just gonna type my email here, and then you can send me an email saying that you are interested in getting this Sims link or MIS link, and I can do that for you. So it's very easy. All we need to do is you have to give us your school name, and then we're gonna send a request to your data manager in your school, and they will get basically a pop-up on their system saying, is it okay to share this data with Seneca? And they'll say yes, and that's it. That's done. The next day, everything's synced, and it will be automatically synced every midnight. So any changes that happen with your students or your staff will be reflected on Seneca the very next day. Super, super easy. Couldn't get easier than that. So Connor is asking, the limit is 3 live questions on the free version per class. Yeah, so you can copy the questions to multiple classes, but each class can only have 3 live questions at one time. Hope that makes sense. Right, we have 2 more minutes. So if anybody has any more questions, I can answer them. If not, well, I'm gonna wait the 2 more minutes anyway. But do make sure that you go on our website. Do make sure that you fill out your use. Okay, I'm just gonna post all the links again. So here's the link for our Tuesday webinar. Do sign up even if you don't think you can make it live, because you get the link to watch the recording later. This is the link to get more information about the premium Seneca package. And if you want more information about anything, exam questions, remember, just reminding that you have 3 live exam questions per class on the free version. If you want more, you have to get premium. Yeah. Okay, so one more question. Yes, you can see the questions that students got wrong if you go on your report. So if you go on your class and you go on assignments, you can see all the questions that students answered here. And you can see the ones, it's not this one. Maybe it wasn't this one. I lost the one that I wanted now. But yeah, you can see there. So you're gonna see the mark scheme. So you can see if they got 0 out of 3, 2 out of 3. For example, here, these two, they got it wrong. So you can click and you see the answer that they gave, what was supposed to be the answer, and then you can remark them if you want as well. Okay, so Louis back. Let's just say bye. And then everybody have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Do get in touch with us, okay? Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.